And now red herrings. These are the things that people think are likely to happen, risks that people are concerned about that we don't think are going to play out over the course of the year, ending the report with a little optimism. And there are three this year. First, Trump fails. There are a lot of people around the world that see Trump as not very effective, not very competent, not very interested in governing, and that he's going to have a lot of mistakes. He's not going to be able to get things done. We don't think that's true at all. We actually think, on balance, he's going to have enormous numbers of successes, especially on the international stage in his early months. And there are a few reasons for this. First, because the U.S. is much more powerful compared to other countries than it was back in 2017. U.S. economy has responded strongly in the post-pandemic environment. Other countries, its allies and adversaries, have not. Also, Trump has consolidated power in this administration to a much greater degree. It's his coattails that the GOP is riding this time around, not the other way around in 2017. So they're very loyal. He also has much more consolidated power of loyalists around him in his own administration. So it's not like foreign leaders can say, I don't like what Trump said, let me work with this cabinet secretary. That doesn't work this time around. There's also a lot more support for Trump in other countries around the world. Soon, Canada is likely to have a conservative PM, Pierre Poilievre, who's going to be much more aligned with Trump than certainly Justin Trudeau has been. In Germany, incoming, likely, Friedrich Merz, also more aligned with Trump. We see this in all sorts of smaller countries, like in Hungary and Slovakia and Argentina and El Salvador. When Trump is standing on summits, whether it's NATO or the G7 or the G20, he will have legitimate friends and proxies around him that will make it different than back in 2017-18, where he made a statement that a whole bunch of people were chuckling afterwards. That is not where we are right now. And finally, because the consequences are so much greater for getting the United States wrong. We are in a more dangerous geopolitical environment. We're in a much more challenging geoeconomic environment than in 2017, and countries are looking to not get cross-sides with the United States. All of that means that the willingness of international leaders to find a way to give Trump what he wants is a lot higher in the first months of 2025 than most people expect. A second herring, Europe breaks. Lots of pressure on the Europeans right now from the United States, the incoming Trump administration, from Russia and the ongoing war in Ukraine, from the Europeans themselves and all of the anti-establishment elections that have led to a growth in populism across Europe. But Europe will hold together, in part because of these threats and in part because of the importance of European governance. There is a stronger set of EU leaders in Brussels today than there was 5 years ago, led by the beginning of Ursula von der Leyen's second term, as well as Kaja Kallas and Roberta Metsola. They will be supported not just by Macron, who acts as a strong leader internationally, even as his domestic environment is in shambles, and that will be true until we get closer to his own 2027 elections, and also with the end of Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor, and the likely election of Friedrich Merz in Germany, who will work much more closely both with EU leaders and with the French president. There will be much greater support for common defense policy and greater defense spending, with Mark Rutte as the new Secretary General of NATO, and a recognition that the alternative is threats to European defense. In other words, as you resolve near-term the Ukraine war, but don't resolve Russia as a rogue, Europeans are much more concerned about what this means for them, and they are willing to spend. There are going to be countries that have challenges with what the Europeans are doing, and the Europeans are finding ways to ensure that those policies are concluded irrespective of that opposition. And if that means that they aren't unanimous, there are mechanisms to make that happen. Furthermore, the desire of even the Hungarians to ensure that they are getting funding from the Europeans is high. So we don't see strong Eurosceptic efforts in Europe the way we did in the days of Brexit going forward in the near term. And for those that are saying, oh, this is, Le Pen is about to win in France, not at a minimum until 2027, the AfD in Germany, no path to power come February 23. And then a third red herring, the global energy transition stalls. With Trump coming in and talk of drill, baby, drill, of course, there's going to be more support for fossil fuel producers in the United States. So they're already producing at record levels. So that's not going to move all that much in the near term. More importantly is that the scale of transition energy investment and the prices coming down is already sufficiently great around the world that it's unstoppable politically. That will be true in the United States with red states, including Texas, which is now the America's largest producer in transition energy, in addition to fossil fuels, benefiting a lot from the old Inflation Reduction Act and the energy transition jobs and investments, and wanting to continue that. Electric vehicles are not going to end in the United States, even if you see an end to the subsidies, which Trump has talked about and Elon Musk has actually supported. Meanwhile, the Europeans have policies that continue to support that orientation and drive. So do the Chinese, who are world leaders in energy transition and infrastructure and supply chain. And even the global south, in countries like India, where it's essential for them to deal with air pollution, we are seeing a move to take advantage of greater renewable energy at scale. None of this means we're resolving climate change, but it does mean that irrespective of who you happen to vote for in the United States and around the world, the global energy transition is continuing and actually speeding up.